Jay-Z is just one of the musicians who have put out songs this past week in response to the latest shootings of black men by police. There was also Miguel, Ariana Grande, and others. Steve, what's your reaction to this?
Well, I mean, I don't mean to be too dark, but I feel like this is the week where we got our comeuppance in pop culture. Like the culture of narcissism and consumerism that underlies all of our pop culture is just starting to spiral out of control, and that's why we're starting to look like we're in 1968 again. Where, you know, I mean, this music, some of it's good, some of it's not good, but all of it is vain. All of it is about political positioning. All of it is about personal expression rather than any kind of empathy or anything larger than itself. I mean, you know, we talked about this last week on the show, but when Kendrick Lamar changed his lyrics for the president, like, I've been thinking about that all week. Like, they would never have done that in the civil rights movement. They would never have changed the lyrics of their political message to the president just because it was his daughter's birthday. You know, like, that's not what would have happened. And I think, to me, this is something that it's not these specific artists. It's underlying the whole culture.
So you're saying this is self-serving as opposed to...
It can't help but be self-serving.
Can I jump
in? There's no choice. There's no choice but to be it.
Randy, jump in.
So two things. I would agree with that. I think this is a version of kind of a hip-hop mogul corporate social responsibility move from Jay-Z. But to your point about spiraling out of control, I totally disagree.
Really, eh?
The consumer American culture can contain anything. And so the fact of the matter is Jay-Z dropped Spiritual, and where is it being played? In the middle-class suburbs of America, right? And this is the basic model for successful pop music, successful black music from blues and jazz all the way forward, right? For me, the question is, for that kind of secure kid in Naperville, Illinois, who's listening to this in a nice subdivision, is that kid hearing that song and feeling like he's doing something by listening to it? Or is it just been consumed and just made part of his general consumption?
Sure. Well, I mean, Del, what do you think? I mean, I feel like, wouldn't it be weird if someone like Jay-Z didn't respond? I mean...
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, look, I think we have to look at what the actual song... We haven't actually talked about the actual song right now.
It is a good song.
And if we are to look at the actual song and look at the lyrics and look at what he's actually expressing in the record, what we are seeing is that there's this whole thing of "don't calculate us," and there's a phrase there's a refrain in that, and essentially it's like, don't make us be a statistic. It's like a cold and illogical, like that distance, that detachment. He's saying this is spiritual, so he's kind of saying, well, look, you know, like he wants to be seen as a whole person, and this "I am not a poison" thing. So. I mean, I think what
but
he's
it's
actually... But the thing is, it's what we were talking about with social media here. He has a reach. So when people hear those songs, they kind of put themselves into that.
But there's something else.
And basically people need these kind of things. You know,
see, I think
when people have these platforms and they reach an audience, people will take that in, and the I becomes them.
See, you guys, that just seems to me way too hopeful to me. I mean, it really does. Like, the idea that this is going to lead to some kind of consciousness raising. Like, I heard Newt Gingrich on the radio saying, Black Lives Matter because African Americans face a completely different relationship to the police. Like, Newt Gingrich has got this.
Well, but Newt Gingrich doesn't have a record on. Like, it's not believable because he's not authentic on this particular issue. But Jay-Z has been writing songs like 99 Problems. He has a history of writing songs in this vein.
My point is, if you're reaching Newt Gingrich and it's still not changing anything, where is the change? Like, if you're reaching a guy that...
Is it up to artists, to pop musicians, to rappers to change the world? I mean, isn't their job just as artists to
make music,
and to reflect the world around them, to speak to their experience? I mean, isn't it a tall
But that's what's
order?
weird. Okay, that's what's weird. He's speaking to his experience. It's the I-them question, right? Mm-hmm. So he's talking about Blue Ivy in this. Mm-hmm. Jay-Z's inhabiting the role of an exposed black man in urban America strikes me as really, really problematic, right? I mean, here's somebody who's pretty darn protected, but if the listener can inhabit that and identify it, that's a whole other thing. To think about Spiritual, he's invoking Negro spirituals from the 19th century, right? There's a whole history that he's playing with there. I think he quotes Frederick Douglass in the song, if I'm not mistaken. So there is a continuity that speaks to political engagement, history, social responsibility. But for me, it all just comes down to all of this matters because it's going to be bought and paid for by a lot of middle-class consumers.
Yeah, but I don't get the sense that they are trying to make money necessarily off of this. Yes, Jay-Z is a very corporate-oriented person, but in a lot of ways, everything he does is kind of in step with that. So whatever his art and his commerce
But that's what I'm saying. It's
instincts
CSR. It's corporate social responsibility.
are always integrated. Yet, I do believe that, you know, when it comes to this song and other things that he's done, you know, I mean, I think there's more subtlety to what he's been doing recently. I mean, even on the Watch the Throne album,
Yeah.
which a lot of people kind of overlooked as being something a little bit more gaudy and hedonistic in some ways, there were a lot of insights and critiques on race in that. Given the fact that he is now considered, you know, someone who's very rich, but he's now navigating different spaces, and there are critiques of race at that level.
We have to,
Oh, yeah.
we have to move on. I know this is such a juicy topic, but we have to move on.